Running through those Jersey streets, I was just visiting, but in that moment, I felt young, good-looking, and free. New Jersey wasn't my home, just another stop in a life filled with stops. But in that place, in that time, the air seemed different, charged with the kind of energy that makes you feel like something big is just around the corner. That night, I fell asleep a broken man, staring at a hotel room ceiling, surrounded by silence that was almost too loud. But in my dreams, I flew. And fly I did. It started small. At first, I would sprint through streets that seemed so much like Jersey, but just a little off. Streets where the lights cast a different hue and shadows felt deeper, like ink spilled over a canvas. I would run and run until my legs felt like they would give out, but they never did. And then one night, as I pushed forward, my arms flapping wildly, I felt a lift, a sudden weightlessness. The wind under me grew dense, a force pushing up against my limbs, and suddenly my feet left the ground. Each night, the dreams grew more vivid. I would leap from rooftop to rooftop, gliding through the misty night air, the stars above me like a canopy of hidden worlds. I practiced, like I was learning a new skill, and soon I didn't just fly, I soared. I learned to control my ascent, to bank through turns and dive close enough to the ground that I could hear the rustle of leaves brushing past me. I felt the air shift against my skin, like a lover's touch, as I carved through the sky. It was exhilarating. In my dreams, I was everything I couldn't be when I woke up. I was young, I was wild, I was powerful. It wasn't long before I began to test my limits, to see just how far this dream could take me. One night, I decided that I would be more than a man who flew. I would be a force of nature. I envisioned myself as a guardian, a vigilante, something straight out of a comic book, with powers that stretched beyond the clouds, and the dream bent to my will. I found myself in a strange city, half New Jersey and half something else, something out of a painting, where the buildings rose like dark, sharp-edged mountains, and neon lights reflected off the wet streets, casting the world in shades of blue and purple. It was a city that had never existed, but seemed as real as the ground beneath my feet. I wandered through this shadowy world until I came upon a high-end, dimly lit nightclub. Its windows glowed softly, and jazz music filtered out, muffled and dreamy, as if carried from another era. Inside, the club was nearly empty, with a few lost souls scattered among the shadowed corners. As I walked in, my reflection caught my eye. There, in a polished, old-world mirror. I stared at a stranger. He was taller, leaner, dressed in a long black coat that swirled with every movement. His hair was wild, his eyes a mix of blue, green, and grey, like the sea before a storm. He was me, but he wasn't. He was the version of myself I had always wanted to be, the one that life had never allowed. A voice drew my attention, a woman's, roughened by smoke but rich with a hidden softness. She was at the bar, pinned between two large but grizzled men, their clothes stained with the dust and sweat of a life lived hard. They were harassing her, their words a slurred mess, hands heavy on her shoulders. It was a scene I couldn't ignore. I stepped forward, feeling the power within me awaken, moving through time and space faster than I ever had. One moment, I stood across the room. The next, I was upon them. With a single strike, I sent the first man sprawling to the floor. The second tried to react, but I grabbed him by the collar and tossed him against the wall. They scrambled away, bruised and bewildered, like dogs who had just met a wolf. The woman looked at me with wide eyes, gratitude mingled with fear. And then, in that dream logic that needs no explanation, I kissed her. The world seemed to shimmer around us, like reality was bending to our moment. And then, suddenly, I was awake, back in my dark, empty hotel room, the echo of her touch fading into the cool night air. But this time, something lingered. It was as if I'd brought a piece of the dream back with me. I could still smell the foggy air of that imaginary city, feel the wind that had whipped through my coat. The next night, and the one after that, I found myself returning to that dream world. Each time I pushed further, testing the edges of my power. I flew higher than I ever had, soaring above the city, feeling the cold kiss of space as I brushed against the edge of the atmosphere. I would look down upon the world, feeling like a god, a protector of this strange, beautiful place. There I could be trusted with power, with freedom. I could shape the world below me as I saw fit. But with each return, I stayed a little longer. The days in the real world seemed less vibrant. duller in comparison to the dream. My mind began to crave the thrill of flight, the weightlessness of that place where I was everything I'd ever wanted to be. And soon, the dreams weren't enough. I wanted to live there, to leave behind the hotel room with its peeling wallpaper and the life that had brought me nothing but disappointment. I wanted to stay. One night, as I flew above the dream city, I saw a gathering below me, a crowd of people waiting in the moonlit streets, staring up at the sky. They were looking for me. I descended slowly, touching down as they moved closer, eyes filled with awe, with questions. I realized that in this world, I wasn't just a man who had found his way into a dream. I was something more, someone they believed in, someone who could shape their reality. As I stepped among them, feeling their hands reaching out to touch me, to ask for guidance, I wondered, was it possible to cross over completely? To let go of the waking world and embrace this place where I could finally be free? The thought lingered as I woke, my feet touching the cold floor of the hotel room, my breath catching in my throat. But this time I felt a certainty settle within me, like the answer had been there all along. Tomorrow night, I would return to that world. I would let myself dive deeper than ever before, past the edge of dreams. I would see if I could make the transition, to step fully into the place where I was not just a man, but something more. A being of power and grace, untethered by the rules of reality. And if I succeeded, I wondered what would become of the world I left behind. Would it miss me, or would it forget I had ever existed? As the daylight waned, I felt no fear, only a thrill that pulsed through me, like the rhythm of my heartbeat against the pull of the wind. I closed my eyes, ready to take the leap. After all, I had a destiny to fulfill, even if it lay beyond the borders of the waking world. Hotkeys for the next chapters. 1. Continue the story as he attempts the full